Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. We're starting 12 o'clock sharp, and like I said, welcome to today's webinar. A few housekeeping things that we need to go through. So, guys, I'm not quite sure. It's quite a bit that I've got to share with you today. So I'm not quite sure if we're going to have time for Q&A at the end of the session. If we don't, then please forward your questions to info@ascp.edu.au. I just remembered, I'm so sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Alex Schroder. For those of you that have followed or come to my webinars regularly, you guys know who I am. You guys know a bit about me. For those of you that are here for the first time, welcome, of course. And just a very, very brief one. I am the CEO of VetPrep Australia. We are a very specialist we're a very specialist consultancy that help RTOs with sanctions and all things ugly, and we also do a few other things. But we help RTOs with, like I said, sanction management, initial registrations, non-compliances, audits, etc., etc. I do quite a few things in the vet sector. For argument's sake, or as example, I wrote the cert for an RTO compliance a while ago, as well as the diploma of RTO compliance management. I write other non-accredited courses like the RTO standards unpacked, etc. But enough about me. If you want to know more about who I am and what I do, please feel free to go to my LinkedIn, and by all means go and stalk me. I promise you I won't object. So guys, okay, now to get to today's, hold on a second. I've now just bumped things up. Bear with me for 1 second. I'm very good at doing this. So in today's webinar, or before we start today's webinar, as I said earlier on, if we don't have time for questions, then please email all of your questions to info@ascp.edu.au. Similarly, if you have questions, after webinar, over the weekend or next week, you may sit there and think to yourself, oh, I had a question, I forgot to actually ask it. By all means, please send your questions in. Once again, info@ascp.edu.au, and the ARC team will forward those questions on to me. So sometimes when I get questions in, it is easier to just give you a call and just to chat it through with you instead of trying to respond to your question by email. If you do send in any questions, please make sure that you include your mobile number, because, like I said, it may just be easier for me to just pick up the phone and just call you and have a quick chat. As always, we're having a very quick look at ASQA audits and regulatory activities. Guys, ASQA is still having a field day where audits are concerned. And as I say every single week, and I've been saying this for at least the past, 3-4 months, if not longer, please make sure that you are 100% audit ready 100% of the time, because ASQA are just doing audits left, right, and center. Something that's really important to bear in mind as well is there's a number of RTOs, in fact, there's a large number of RTOs that are going through re-registration, or they are being re-registered without any ASQA audits. Guys, if you've been re-registered without an ASQA audit, please make sure that you remember it isn't a sign that ASQA won't come knocking on your door. ASQA are doing a lot of re-regis at the moment without audits, simply because they are short on staff and they're busy running around and auditing other RTOs that they're concerned about. So a number of RTOs often say to me, we're safe, we've had re-registration, ASQA didn't come and audit us, we don't need to worry. Don't have that mentality, because if you do, you may just find yourself being caught unawares when you suddenly have an ASQA love letter. Another thing, please make sure, as part of being ASQA audit ready at all times, do your internal audits. And when you've done your internal audits, remember it's a really, really good idea, and it's very sound business practice to get your compliance consultant in regularly to come and also do an independent audit for you. And the reason for that is, when the compliance practitioners in your RTO, when they are doing their internal audits, basically they are auditing their own work. And we all know that although there's nothing wrong with auditing your own work, we all know that it's always good to have another person look at your compliance practitioner's work, just to make sure that everything is hunky-dory. Certificates of attendance for attending today's webinar should come through to you guys within 3 business days of today. So keep an eye on your inbox. All right, what are we looking at today? Today, we're looking at ASQA's special investigation powers. And one of the reasons why we're doing this is because ASQA has been really busy insofar as looking at RTOs that are doing the wrong thing. And they have got, under the various acts, they've got special investigation powers that allow them to do things out of what I'd say is the norm. And that is evidenced by all of the RTO cancellations that we've been seeing, and all of the qualification cancellations we've been seeing, etc. I'm just getting my screen on the side. Bear with me, bear with me, bear with me. I'm working on new technology, and it's always a bit of an issue. So we're going to be going through what ASQA's special investigation powers include, how investigations are initiated, early warning signs that your RTO should never ignore, what ASQA can compel your organization to produce, disclose, or submit, not permit, submit, your rights and obligations during an investigation, practical steps to prepare your RTO before any regulatory scrutiny really starts. And also, if your RTO does become subject to ASQA's special investigation powers, what you should do and how you should engage with ASQA without actually worsening your position. So what does ASQA's special investigation powers include? Under their special investigations powers, they have got the right to request any documents from your RTO whatsoever. And what I mean by any documents, they can ask you for learner documents, they can ask you for operational documents, they can literally ask you for any single document that you've got as an RTO. Their special investigations powers also allow them to compel non-RTO organizations to provide documents. And I'm going to explain that a bit further on in the webinar. They've also now got the right to compel any person, any individual, to come to their offices for investigation purposes. They can obtain a warrant to enter your RTO premises, and they've also got the power to take some of their team members and to, for sake of to just put this in very simple English, they can actually take, or they can empower any of their staff as an authorized officer to go and execute the warrant and go and do search and whatever they want. So investigations, how are they initiated? How do ASQA decide on whether or not they're going to do a special investigation on an RTO? It's intel gathering. So I know that these days ASQA don't really do a risk rating for RTOs. However, RTOs that have a history of non-compliances, and especially serious non-compliances. Remember, anything that your RTO does, ASQA has got anything and everything that your RTO does. ASQA keeps a file on that. And it's a case of when they decide, or when they get, let's say for argument's sake, they get further intel on an RTO that they already had concerns about. It goes into their little, I want to call it a black book. Don't take that too literally. But if they find that there's an RTO that previously had concerns about, and they gather new intel about the RTO's operations, then that could very well trigger a special investigation. It's also a case of known associations with people or organizations. And what I mean by that is we all remember there were organizations, non-RTOs, that used to specialize in RPLs, and specifically where they were actually RPL paper mills, where people could essentially go and buy a qualification through RPL. I'm not going to name names because that might just get me into deep water, but we all know who I'm talking about, or the kind of organizations I'm talking about. So here's the interesting thing. We were working with an RTO a little while ago that were hit by an ASQA special investigation. They called us in when they started getting these really, really tense and terse letters from RTF, from ASQA. One of the things that ASQA was focusing on, one of the many things, was their trainers and assessors. And it came to light that they were focusing on a specific couple of trainers and assessors who were also previously involved in one of these RPL paper mills. And so when I say known associations with people or organizations, if ASQA has intelligence that your RTO is conducting business or is using the services of people or organizations that they deem to be of ill repute, that is obviously going to raise a red flag, and that could very well also trigger a special investigation. Your annual declaration on compliance submissions. Now, this is an interesting one. I heard recently that ASQA is using AI to do analysis on all the declaration of compliances that are being submitted. And what the AI analysis does is it basically red flags any RTO that ASQA should go and have another look at. So that's another way that they are gathering intel on RTOs that they believe should, or they believe warrant another look at. Marketing. The RTOs, and believe it or not, there are still RTOs that go and market accredited courses in stupidly short timeframes. And guys, remember that your marketing is out there not only for prospective learners or for learner recruitment, but remember that the regulator also looks at this. So if your RTO is advertising accredited courses that can be completed in a questionable time frame, you could very well find that unbeknownst to your RTO, that you have just put a spotlight on your RTO complaints. Now, we know that ASQA is big on, they've reintroduced the tip-off line. They are actively encouraging both people in the RTO sector as well as non-RTO sector to go and lodge complaints. I'm not suggesting that every single complaint that is lodged or submitted is going to automatically raise a red flag. However, they do use complaints to also gauge if they believe, or to determine if they believe an RTO does need special investigation, and of course also the nature of the complaints. Casual conversations, and what I mean by that is, so often, in the vet sector, and you guys have heard me say for years that the vet sector is an incestuously small little sector. We work in our own little bubble, we live in our own little bubble, and so often we'll sit there and we'll be chatting to somebody else within the vet sector. We casually mention something, and it's almost like Chinese whispers. And the conversations that are held sort of evolve and they revolve, and they get told and they get retold. And you never know who ends up hearing that conversation. So when I say casual conversations, ASQA also gathers intel from people just having a chat about things. Your audit findings is also very likely, if you have audit findings that ASQA or that raises serious concerns with ASQA, that could trigger a special investigation. your RTO's reporting activities, such as, let's say, for argument's sake, your evictness reporting, once again, your annual declaration on compliance, all those reporting activities for RTOs that do funding, that have funding arrangements. Remember, we do reporting to other government agencies, and government agencies are talking to each other. One of the things that, just by way of an example, one of the things that we've seen recently in the last 12, 18 months is that where RTOs, for argument's sake, have massive tax debts or don't submit their income tax details as they should and do the income tax submissions when they should, the ATO actually talks to ASQA. And for those of you that run CRICOS colleges, please know that the Department of Immigration talks to ASQA as well. So there's so much collaboration happening within different government organizations and government agencies, and ASQA uses that to gather intel on RTOs as well. So early signs that your RTO should never, ever, ever ignore. Let's talk first of all about ASQA audit activities. So you're in an ASQA audit and your ASQA auditor is asking questions that are a little bit out of the norm. Now, as an RTO, as you go through an ASQA audit, you may not realize that the questions that are being asked and the types of documents that are being asked for is out of the norm. And you've heard me say at least a quadrillion times that when you are going through a regulatory audit, never, ever, ever go through the audit without your compliance consultant. And I'm not going to go over the reasons or many reasons why you should, but one of the reasons, sorry, I'm not going to go through many reasons why you should engage your auditor, your consultant there, apart from, remember, as an RTO, your RTO doesn't go through ASQA audits every single day, not even every single month. As compliance consultants, one of our jobs and a very critical part of our jobs as a compliance consultant is to go through ASQA audits with our RTO clients. And what that means, to give you guys an idea, at VetPrep, I think where we now, we are mid-April. I think in the last 2, 3, 4 months, I personally have probably sat through now about 36 ASQA audits with my clients. And what that means realistically is because going through ASQA audits with my RTO clients is part of my job, I can sit in an audit and the auditor might ask something and I go, ching, 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 not ching, ching, but alarm bells go off because I realize that that question is out of the norm. And yes, as a compliance consultant, I'll then sort of start quizzing the auditor, et cetera, et cetera. However, if you are going through your ASQA audits without your compliance consultant, or even with a compliance consultant who is fairly new to be a consultant, there's hundreds of them. If you go through the audit without your consultant, you are not necessarily going to pick up that the auditor's asking questions out of the norm. Your compliance consultant, however, should pick up. And like I said, that's where alarm bells goes off for us. And we then go, uh-oh, they might be looking at something other than what we've been told because they've got the right to. And when the alarm bells go off, I also think to myself, okay, so they are looking at something deeper, and therefore we should be prepared, or we should start looking at what it is that they're looking at and why they are looking at it. If you find that your ASQA audit is going on for a long time, longer than what it should, and if they keep on coming back and they keep on asking for more documents and more documents and more documents, guys, that is, in 9 times out of 10, that is an absolute sure sign that they are digging for other stuff and that they have got concerns, and that your RTO most likely has raised red flags with the regulator. And that is where we as compliance consultants, that is where we then become a bit concerned for our RTO clients, because that is usually that is an indication that there's more at foot than what appears. So if ASQA has decided to launch a special investigation on your RTO's operation, trust me, the one thing that they will not tell you is they will not tell you, hey, we are now doing an instant special investigation on your RTO. They're going to go business as usual. But as I said, their business as usual, how that's going to come up is they're going to be asking for different things than what was initially in the audit scope, or they might keep on asking for more and more documentation than they had originally asked, even if that is within the scope of the audit. And when they do that, your RTO must at all times. Sorry, and they can also ask your RTO for any and all operational documents, such as your learner student records, enrollment records. If you are a CRICOS provider, they can ask for details of visas. They can ask for details that sit on prisms. They can, and in all likelihood will, ask you for more details on your PRISM files. Whether you are CRICOS or domestic, they will start asking for staff files. And remember I said earlier on about organizations or people that you are known to associate with that can raise red flags. When they look at your trainer and assessor files, if they do find that you do engage or you do work with a trainer or assessor or have employed a trainer and assessor that is known to be involved, and guys, I'm choosing my words with care very specifically here. If they do know, or if it does become evident that you are engaged with or have previously been engaged with organizations or trainers and assessors, individuals that are known to not always work 100% above board, they're going to be asking you for that. If they ask you for your assessment records, obviously you need to provide that, your completion records, information, your third parties, agreements that you might have, for CRICOS providers, your recruitment agents, your contracts, your activities. So when so remember that the NVR Act allows ASQA to ask you for any documentation regarding your operations, any documentation whatsoever. And as an RTO, if we don't cooperate with them and if we don't provide this documentation, well, we've just gone and caused yet another non-compliance. So here's the thing. I said earlier on that ASQA has got the right to elevate the status of their staff as authorized officers. And what that means is that these staff members can come onto your RTO premises with a warrant. I'm going to repeat that because this is important. If ASQA is really concerned about your RTO, you will have a visit from people that announce themselves as authorized officers under the Act, and they arrive with a warrant. And that warrant, essentially what happens is the authorized officers are then allowed to act almost like, I usually say, the AFP. Some people say, hey, they then start acting like police force, but because they go deeper, like I said, they then have almost similar rights of investigations as the AFP might if they investigating something criminal. Now, this is really important. If you ever have an ASQA or have ASQA's authorized officers come onto your premises with a warrant, you've got very, very few rights. You've got a lot of obligations, but you've got very, very few rights. One of the rights that you do have, and probably the only right that you do have, is under those circumstances, is you can then ask them to say, you can then say to them, guys, look, you're here with a warrant. I'm a little bit spooked. I need to phone my consultant. Give me a few minutes. Let me phone my consultant, or let me phone my lawyer. Because I'm actually going to take a back step here for a sec. So imagine this. Imagine that your RTO is just carrying on business like usual, and you're running classes if you cry class, or if you do face-to-face delivery, and suddenly you've got these people walk in and go, we are here as authorized, officers under the Act, or we are here as ASQA authorized officers under the Act. And I want everybody to stop what they're doing right now, leave your desks, leave your workstations, and go to a common area. And they will even go into classrooms and they will say exactly the same. They'll say to your trainers and assessors and your learners, stop what you're doing right now, leave everything on your desk, including computers, laptops, etc., and go to that area there. Now, for that to happen to any RTO, it's pretty bewildering. And so often RTOs that find themselves in that situation will go, oh my gosh, we can't help you right now. Our CEO isn't here, or this isn't here, or that person isn't there. They don't need to be. They will walk in with a warrant to search your premises, regardless of who is or who isn't there. We had a situation a little while ago where we were actually brought in by a CRICOS provider who their audit was taking a heck of a long time, and the auditor kept on asking for more and more and more stuff. And at that stage, they became a little bit nervous. And I remember getting a phone call, and luckily, sorry, the academic manager had worked with another RTO previously that was one of our clients, and we helped them get through a very tricky regulatory situation as well. So when this happened, and when their order just kept on going on and on and on, I got a phone call from this person this one day, and she said to me, look, Alex, she said, I am really, really nervous because this has been happening with our audit, and I think we need help. And she said to me, can you please get on a plane? I was living in Brisbane at the time. They were in Sydney. And she said, can you please get on a plane and come and help us, because we've got another meeting with the ASQA auditor, and I think we need you there to just go through it with us and to just, see what's going on. So I did. And I think I went down a day or two before their next meeting with the ASQA auditor, and of course I needed a bit of time just to find out what the backstory was. And even during that meeting with the ASQA auditor, I think it was a Teams meeting, the ASQA auditor was just asking weird questions. And as soon as that meeting was through, both her and the PO and the owner of the college, we went into the meeting, and I said to them, guys, something is not right here. And I said to them, I think we are in for a bit of pain, a bit being an understatement at the time. Anyway, we spent time, and I started doing a forensic audit for them on exactly what ASQA was auditing them on, to try and find out what it is that ASQA was looking at that was causing this these strange behaviors from the auditor, is the best way to put it. Fast forward about 2 weeks later, and I'm working from home the one day, and I get a phone call from her, and she is panicked. And she said to me, I've just had people arrive here, announce themselves as authorized officers, and they've got a warrant, and insert name, the RTO owner, isn't there. I don't know what to do. And the first thing I said to her, there's nothing that you can do. You've got to let them go ahead. They've got a warrant, and you've got to do exactly as they instruct you to do. And I said to her, but just, just give them to me very quickly. Put me on the phone to them. And I got on the phone to them, and it's people that I've worked with before in their capacity as authorized officers. And I said to them, I said, look, I have no idea what's going on. I've got no idea why you guys are there. Can you guys give me any kind of clue? And they predictably said no. And I went, look, that's fine. I'm going to instruct my client to obviously cooperate with you guys 100%, but I'm also just going to get their lawyer on the phone. And they went, no, that's fine, Alex, go ahead. And, thank you for telling your client to not obstruct us. Where I'm coming from with sharing that experience with you guys is, yes, my client at the RTO, she did absolutely the right thing to phone me straight away. And when she said to them, look, I want to phone my consultant, apparently they said, who's your consultant? She said, Alex Schroder. And they went, yep, we'll give you a few minutes. However, please know that they are not obliged to give you a few minutes to phone your consultant. In that instance, we were very lucky. They were quite happy to just first let her get on the phone to me. And like I said, I had a conversation with them before they started executing the warrant. However, they are not obliged to do so. So if you do have ASQA authorized officers arrive there with a warrant, although you can say to them, guys, just give me a minute or two, let me just get on the phone to my consultant, I don't know what's happening, they can do you a favor, they can be nice and give you those few minutes. However, they are not obliged to. And if they don't give you a few minutes and they do start going through your RTO, executing their warrant, still get on the phone to your consultant straight away or your lawyer. What you cannot do is when they arrive with a warrant, what you cannot do is you cannot refuse them entry to your RTO premises. You cannot refuse to cooperate, and you cannot obstruct them executing the warrant in any way whatsoever. Because, guys, if they enter your RTO with a warrant, it is the same as getting a knock on your door at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the cops barging in and saying, "We've got a warrant. We are now doing a full search of the premises." So please, for your own sake, if you do have, or if you are unlucky enough to experience a very unpleasant visit from ASQA authorized officers with a warrant, cooperate. There's nothing that you can do. So, practical steps. If you believe, or if you feel that your regulatory audit isn't going so well, you need to immediately, without even a second thought, you need to engage a specialist consultant to help you deal with your ASQA audit straight away. Now, when I say a specialist consultant, give me one sec, Mart. It's freezing here in Melbourne and my throat is dry. When I say a specialist consultant, you need to engage a consultant that specializes in sanction management and governance and all those kind of things. You need to go and get some big guns in straight away. Your regular compliance consultant is not going to be able to help you. And the reason why I say that, if we think about it, there's something like, I think at last count, there were 345 compliance consultants out there. The majority of those compliance consultants are what I refer to as garden variety. And they do really, comparatively speaking, they do low-level consulting work. And there's only, I think, about 4 or 5 of us consultants that really specialize in, I want to say, picking fights with ASQA for our RTOs, but that's just that's not quite the right thing to say. But there's less than a handful of us that actually specialize in dealing with matters like this, in dealing with sanction management, in knowing exactly what to do, when to do, how to do it, etc. So once again, if you find yourself in this very, very unfortunate situation, get hold of a specialist consultant straight away, and time is going to be of essence. So be ready to phone them straight away. The next thing that should happen is your specialist consultant should be briefed immediately and as soon as possible. I know so often when we get phone calls from RTOs that really need help, we get a phone call to say, we need you now. When can you be there? In fact, it's funny. I moved to Melbourne from Brisbane beginning of November, and I moved into my home. I think it was the 19th of November. It was sort of midweek of the week of the 19th. And the Tuesday afternoon, I was at my temporary accommodation and I got a phone call from an RTO in Sydney that said, we need your help, we need you now, when can you hop on a plane? And I said to them, look, I'm busy getting ready to move into my new home, probably not for another day or two. And I said to them, look, what's going on? Tell me. And when they explained to me what was going on, I said, you know what? I'm going to book a flight right now. I'll land in Sydney this evening. I'll see you guys first thing tomorrow morning. Because they were in a situation and they weren't getting ready to go through a special investigation, but they were in a situation where they needed specialist help on the spot. And luckily for them, they reached out to me immediately. And I then spent the next 2 days in Sydney with them debriefing me and starting to have meetings with ASQA and lawyers and things like that. I'm digressing, my apologies. Where I'm really coming from is that if you find yourself in a situation where your audit is going, it feels like it's going sideways, or if you in a situation where you think there's something going on and you may be getting one of these unpleasant visits from ASQA, the first thing you need to do is get hold of a specialist consultant. Now, I know that, and like I said, there's about a handful of us in Australia. Most RTOs don't have specialist consultants on retainer. They don't have specialist consultants on their speed dial, but it's really important to get hold of a specialist consultant immediately and talk to them, see if they can help you and debrief them ASAP. Another thing that I highly recommend you do is if we believe that something is going on in the background and an RTO should be getting ready for a heap of pain and unpleasantness, we always suggest to them that they go and retain a specialist vet solicitor to help them if and when the time comes. And what that looks like is it's normally a case of having a chat with a solicitor, briefing them from our side. So as the consultant, I'll get hold of a solicitor. I'll see if they have got the capacity to take on new work. If it does come down to that, then I would normally suggest to the client that they engage the solicitor, have a first meeting with the solicitor, and then have the solicitor on retainer. So it doesn't cost them any money until they need to, but however, at least if we're in a position where the solicitor has been debriefed, the solicitor knows what's going on. If the proverbial then hits the fan, you've then got your specialist consultant there who knows how to handle the situation, plus your specialist vet solicitor is now on call for you as well. And guys, I'm stressing a specialist vet solicitor because in this instance, your normal corporate lawyer is not going to be able to help you in all likelihood. And the reason for that is, remember, in law, just like in RTO compliance, there are so many different branches of RTO compliance. Like I said earlier on, you've got your consultants that do garden variety consultants. You've got consultants who their main stream of income is writing policies or writing templated policies and procedures and just selling them the whole time. You've got consultants who may specialize only in training trainers and assessors. There are consultants who specialize only, for argument's sake, in processes and things like that. There are consultants like me who are very, very specialist. and we specialize in sanction management and this and that. It's exactly the same with lawyers. So your corporate lawyer or your business lawyer or your lawyer friend who may specialize in contract law or family law or general law is in all likelihood not going to be the right person to have on speed dial at that stage, because just as we have specialist consultants within the vet sector who specialize, I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but who specialize in the hairy nitty gritty of the regulations, the NBR Act, the ESOS Act, etc. So you have specialist vet solicitors. And once again, there's a few of them out there. There's probably only about 3 or 4 that we work with regularly who are good enough at their job or their jobs to be able to be effective and successful for RTOs. So how to engage constructively with your ASQA or with the ASQA investigators without inadvertently worsening your position. Once again, it's exactly the same, or it's very, very similar to when they enter your premises. Be cooperative. Because at the point in time where a special investigation has been started, guys, the fat lady has sung, and you've got nothing to gain by being uncooperative, by being, as my late dad would have said, by being stroppy. You've got nothing to gain by giving those guys a hard time because they're doing their jobs. And remember, they are there because the regulator believes that there's something amiss in how your RTO is being operated. So cooperate fully, be respectful, don't be argumentative, don't be combative, and just work with the guys. But also remember that calling or working with a specialist consultant and or your specialist vet solicitor is not going to worsen your situation whatsoever. So do not think for 1 second that if you do call in a specialist, that it's going to make you look bad to ASQA. It's not. They are absolutely fully aware that and they actually expect RTOs that find themselves in that situation to immediately call in the guns for hire to come and help them, because that is what business operators do. That's what business owners do. I want to give you guys a quick example. And I actually should have mentioned this earlier on. I'm going to go to this slide here. And I want to give you guys, or maybe it's this one here. I want to give you guys some examples that we have, or that some of our RTO clients have experienced with ASQA's special investigation powers. I was working with an RTO client, a Cricos client of ours here in Melbourne, way before I moved to Melbourne. And they were going through a bit of strife because it all sort of went down to, there was just weird things happening in the RTO. And the interesting thing is that this RTO, I do believe, was not a cowboy operator, but the owner had done a few things to try and recover from the devastation that COVID had caused amongst so many RTOs. Anyway, long story short, we were up for a regulatory audit and we knew that we were being audited. So it wasn't a surprise audit. What was surprising, though, is when the audit had started, two very surprising things happened. During the audit, we got notified that the auditor was going to be attending the commercial kitchen the next morning. And I think was it the next morning, or were we given an hour's notice? We were given very, very, very short window. No, that's right. Sorry. We found out almost at close of business on the one day that the ASQA audit is going to be at their commercial training kitchen the next morning. And the first thing I said to the RTO owners, I said to them, bugger what we're going to do tomorrow morning. We are going to be at that commercial training kitchen. And she didn't quite expect us to be there. That was half the fun. However, What was interesting is she walked in, and you could tell she was an auditor on a mission. And the very, very first thing she did is she told all of the learners, all of the students, they were busy doing their practicals. She said, "Stop what you're doing." She said, "I want you guys all in a line here and show me your IDs." And I sort of stood there and I sort of went, WTF, because these poor international students, they were all, what the heck is going on? And one by one, she checked their student ID that had their photographs on it with their actual other ID, with another form of identification. And what she was checking for is, I realized sort of when I was sort of busy processing what was going on, I realized that what she was checking is she wanted to see if people who had signed the class register, if they were actually the same people as that were in at the training kitchen that morning, or if people were signing and just leaving, or if they had mates come in and sign in on their behalf. Now, that was a fairly disturbing experience for both the learners as well as the auditor. And I mean, when I realized what was going on, and I could see the look on the learners, on the students' faces, they were like, really, WTF. I stepped aside and I said to her, "Hey, I appreciate that you've got a job to do. What would be so good is if you could just be a little bit gentler with these students, because they don't know what the heck is going on." And she sort of looked at me and sort of went, "Oh, yeah, okay." And I said to her, "Look, it's really important for the sake of their welfare, but also just for this audit process." And she backed away, or she backed off a little bit. And I said to her, "I'm actually going to now explain to the students what you're doing, because these guys are bewildered." And she went, "Oh, you can't do that." And I said to her, "I am going to do that. And if you don't like it, by all means, phone your manager and I will tell your manager exactly what is going on, how you are behaving, and why I'm doing as I'm doing." And she just backed off and she said, "Okay, I'll give you a few minutes." And I called all these international students and I explained to them, I said to them, "Look, guys, you guys aren't in trouble. Nobody's here to try and deport you or cancel your visas." I said, "All that they are doing is just checking that," because she also had the attendance sheet. I said, "All that they are doing is A, checking that you've signed in correctly, and just B, checking that you've signed your name and your name actually matches your ID." And the students were a little bit more at ease. It was still a very unpleasant experience, but they were just a little bit more at ease. The same client, a few days later, we had some ASQA auditors that just walked into the building unannounced. And the room in which I was working with the CEO at that stage, luckily, it was all glass walls, and I was sitting with my back to the elevator onto that floor. He was sitting facing the elevators. And I mean, the college was the only premises on that, the only business on that floor. And he looked up and he said, "I don't recognize those people." And I looked around and there's just two strange people. And I said, "Well, he's going to find out who they are." So I got up and I went, "Hey guys, can I help you?" And they said, "Oh, we from ASQA." And I said, "Okay, how can," and I said, "Yeah, I've introduced myself, I'm Alex Schroder from VetPrep." And I think because everybody in ASQA knows me, in a good way, mostly, they sort of went, "Yeah, okay." And I said, "Look, I'm Alex Schroder, I'm the consultant. How can we help you?" And they then said, "Oh, they wanted to have a chat with the CEO, etc." And their chat didn't last very long. But I think what had happened, and this was just my suspicion, I think they actually came into the college to see if classes were actually genuinely being run. And I think they were just doing a spot check. Had we not stopped them and asked them what they were doing, they could have been wandering around that specific level of the college, just poking their heads in. Because in that instance, funny enough, they didn't actually have a warrant. They were just simply turning up out of the blue to see if this college was actually genuinely providing delivery. When we put everything together, the weird questions being asked during the audit or earlier on in the audit process, the other auditor going to the commercial kitchen and suddenly checking IDs against the attendance register. And she also, I think, at that stage had the names of the learners, the students enrolled in that course. And then these ASQA auditors just popping in. At that stage, I said to him, you know what? I said to him, we've got problems. They are after something. We don't know. I've got no idea what it could be, but they are after something. And they are busy digging and digging and digging. And at that stage, I said to him, what we're now going to do is we're now going to get you a lawyer, and we're going to meet with this lawyer, and we're going to debrief this lawyer. And we're then going to say to the lawyer, do nothing yet, but at least you know what the situation is, so that if we do need you down the track, you are there. And I think it was within about 2 to 3 weeks, give or take, that we put a phone call through to the lawyer and we said, we now need you, hop on a plane down to Melbourne. So guys, but throughout the encounters that I've just shared with you guys, at no one stage did we get the auditors' backs up. And, you know, I'm the kind of consultant that even though I confronted the auditor, I said to her, hey, you know, can you just be nicer towards the students, etc. The one thing as a consultant that I've always believed in is that I'm always mindful that the ASQA auditors are doing a job. And yes, you know, at this stage, they're not all that friendly and nice towards the RTOs necessarily, because they're seeing the RTOs as somebody or an organization that's doing the wrong thing. However, it's always a case of, if you're respectful and if you're non-confrontational, if you are non-combative, non-argumentative, if you're just nice to the guys, if you just cooperate, then it actually bounds us brownie points down the track as well. And I apologize once again. I have gone completely off track there. It's just that there is so much going on there's so much activities that's going on that the average RTO isn't aware of, insofar as ASQA's special investigative powers. And it's really important that if your RTO becomes part of an ASQA special investigation, you need to be prepared, because it's not necessarily the end of the world. And often it's not the end of the game for you. However, it's also a case of the way that you play the game is so important. I've got one last one to share with you. You guys know I love telling stories. Another client, this was so funny. Another client that we have in Sydney, they have 2 premises. And their head office is running premise number 1, and they've got a training facility in premise number 2, and they were being audited. And we were advised that the audit was going to happen at their head office, etc., etc. And we're also told that obviously their training premises would be visited as well. What ASQA did not tell us is that they were hitting the head office at the same time as they were hitting the training facility. And I think it was also the day before, very, very last moment, that we were notified that the auditors, that they would send one auditing team out to the operational site, to head office, and another operational team to the actual training delivery facility. And the client sat there and they said to me, what do we do, Alex? You are one person. And I said, look, not a problem. Actually, I'll tell you, my apologies. We were told that the training facility would be visited the next day or the same day, but not at the same time. And I remember sitting there with the management team. I said to them, look, not a problem. I'm obviously going to be in head office, so I can sit with, I can be there with the management team as they are being interviewed. And if the auditors get to the other side, the training side, before I've finished at head office, give me a call and we'll just play a bit of a stalling match. Anyway, it happened. They hit both sides almost simultaneously, and I'm in the meeting with two auditors, and I think 2 or 3 members of the senior management team. My phone keeps on blowing up because the delivery side kept on texting and saying, "We've got auditors here. What the heck do we do?" So I stepped out of the boardroom for a second, went and phoned the training manager at the training delivery site, and I said to him, "Look, if you can, just store them a little bit, and if you can't, give them documents that they're asking for, but do not go into any interviews with them until I'm there." So we did, and then at one stage my phone blew up and they said, "Look, these guys are now going to start interviewing us. What do we do?" And I said to them, "I'll be there ASAP." So I went back into the boardroom and I said, "Look, guys, I'm so sorry. Apparently they're about to start interviews at the training delivery site. Please excuse me, I've got to get down there." And just as well that I did, because when I got there, the kind of questions that the auditors were asking were absolutely, in some instances, they were misleading. They were absolutely ambiguous. And it almost felt as if the questions were being asked to try and trip up the staff there. I sat there, I had fun with the auditor, because every time that the auditor was asking ambiguous questions or leading questions, I'd jump in and I'd say, "Hang on a second, can you just clarify this? And anyway, I was in my element. However, the reason why I'm sharing the story with you, and in the end, it turned out that the way that we handled the whole situation, because at one stage I also got we did have a specialist vet lawyer on standby, and at one stage I got him involved as well. The way that we handled the whole situation actually stopped that organization of going into a real deep dive special investigation. So when I suggest to you guys that if you find yourself in this very, very unfortunate situation, if we play the game right, or if we handle the situation correctly, we can actually stop a special investigation. Sometimes we can stop a special investigation from blowing completely up. And it isn't always possible, but it is possible. Like I said, we can actually stop things from getting worse. And yeah, before I repeat myself again for about the 8th time, my apologies. Please have a think about that. And guys, remember that special investigations doesn't only, or don't only, or it isn't only the bad guys, it isn't only the cowboy RTOs out there that can find themselves the subject of a special investigation. Sometimes RTOs that are really run above board, etc., there might be circumstantial evidence that may, or there might be circumstantial situations that lead the regulator to believe that they should have a deep dive into this RTO's operations. It doesn't mean that you are suspected of being a cowboy. It just means that the regulator wants to have a deeper look into how your RTO is actually operating. Because we all know that unfortunately there are still cowboy RTOs out there, and yes, they are the absolute majority of our sector, but as we all know, unfortunately sometimes the minority, sorry, did I say majority? We all know that they are the absolute minority in the sector, but we also all know that it only takes 1 or 2 bad operators to give our entire sector a bad name, and to get the regulator to go, we need to have a closer look at a lot more RTOs. So once again, if you're going through an audit and the audit process doesn't look quite straightforward, don't panic. It's not an indication that they think you're a cowboy operator. But remember when I said earlier on in this webinar that if your audit process doesn't feel 100% right, get hold of a specialist consultant straight away, because we have the experience and we have the knowledge to be able to pick up whether there is something to be concerned about, or if it is maybe something else. And also remember that if you are in the unfortunate situation that you do have authorized officers that do walk in with a warrant, you've got to phone your specialist consultant straight away. Guys, it is, oh my gosh, I have gone on for a bit longer than I intended to. I've probably got time to only answer a very, very few number of questions. Please, 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 please do send your questions through to info@ascp.edu.au. I'm so sorry that I don't really have time to answer questions. I do just believe that sharing this information with you guys was really, really important. And I'd almost say was almost more important than making time for Q&A, only because, as I said, if you have any questions, please email them through to info@ascp.edu.au. I'm going to love and leave you guys. I'm going to wish you a beautiful, beautiful end of a Friday. I've just realized how badly my screen was positioned. I'm going to wish you a beautiful Friday. Have a magnificent weekend. And I will see you guys back at the next webinar. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.